Good afternoon once again, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us for a very special occasion. I'm deeply honored, immensely privileged to be able to host this session. I am Isabel Masozera. I'm the founder of Masozera Africa. It's an initiative that focuses on African women and girls' holistic wellness. Well, today, it is a historic moment, a pivotal moment as we launch the transformative initiative, the unveiling of the experimental twin indices on gender equality and women's empowerment. And today you're going to be learning a lot more about that. You must be asking why. Today, as we embark on this, the pursuit for gender parity has been so obvious. It is a fight that is still ongoing, one that we must all partake of. Now, through the rigorous research and data-driven approaches, these particular indices that you're going to learn about today are able to shed a light on the complex challenges that are facing women not only in Rwanda, but worldwide. And they're able to provide a way to pave solutions when it comes to targeted interventions as well as policy reforms. Later on, we have a presentation for you that will highlight and expound on that a lot more. But before we get there, to kick the ball rolling, please help me warmly welcome the Under-Secretary General and Executive Director, UN Women. I believe we had lunch. We can show some more love. Sima Bose is a champion for women and girls, gender equality and youth empowerment, as well as a keen advocate for equality education, poverty alleviation, inclusive governance, and brings together, to her position, 35 years of leadership experience at the grassroots, national, regional, and international levels. That's not all. Well, coupled with expertise in advancing women empowerment and rights, addressing discrimination and violence, promoting sustainable socio-economic development towards the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. No better way to open this session. Once again, let's welcome to the floor, Sima Bose. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Hello, everyone, and thank you very much for this introduction. And also, it's great to see all of you here. I hear that you all had just had lunch, so maybe you will just be calmer than usual. So I can quickly give my remarks and leave and have my lunch. No, I'm I am really very excited to be here today. It's been a great opening yesterday with the president of the beautiful Rwanda, the First Lady, and many of the presidents who were attending, and also many of the ministers. We had a great day yesterday, and there was a great session this morning on generation equality, and here we are now to launch the indices. So I stand before you today with great excitement and a sense of purpose as we gather here to launch with our partner, UNDP, a transformative new set of gender indices that have the potential to shape and reshape the pursuit of gender equality worldwide. As we all know, the promise to achieve gender equality and indeed of all the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030 is in peril. At the current rate of progress, the achievement of SDG 5 targets may take decades and even centuries to achieve and to materialize. Therefore, we need to do much better, and together we can do better. The launch of these new tools represents a groundbreaking step in redefining how we measure and how we understand progress towards gender equality. And I know that you know that measurement and understanding of progress is key to making more and more progress. So through rigorous research and data-driven approaches, these twin gender indices that we are launching today will shine a light on the complex challenges faced by women across the globe. They offer us a comprehensive view capturing essential aspects of gender equality that have previously gone unnoticed or unaddressed, including women's rights to live a life free from violence. Colleagues, the path to equality is multifaceted. These twin indices call on us to monitor progress historically, recognizing the interconnectedness of the challenges women face and the opportunities we have to overcome them. Moreover, they emphasize the need to distinguish between two equally vital goals. First, we must close the gender gap, ensuring that women and men have equal chances and opportunities in life. And second, we must strive to push for higher levels at par with that of men, of women in human development, because the truth is, women still do have the same level of attainment, whether in leadership, education, health, and so on, as their male counterparts. Colleagues, this report would not be possible without national efforts to expand the availability of gender data, including in support of the SDGs. But many, many gaps remain, including on the status and well-being of women and girls facing intersecting inequalities. Going forward, it is essential that we continue to expand our knowledge and understanding of the barriers faced by women and girls around the world, and that we bridge the gender data gap. As it stands, no country in the world has closed gender gaps entirely or has achieved women's full and equal participation in all aspects of public life. So addressing these challenges will require strong political leadership and the implementation of concrete actions, including universal rollout of family planning programs, measures to address gaps in skills and quality of education, especially in the fields such as STEM, and greater investments in policies and services that address women's unpaid care burdens and support families with care needs. Equally important are measures to promote women's full participation in decision-making and measures to combat violence against women and girls. So today we gather to launch the experimental twin indices on gender equality and women's empowerment. We do so with great hope and determination that efforts such as these can inform policy and spur meaningful change. Together, we can build a world where every woman and every girl can thrive, where their voices are heard and where their potential is realized. So I thank you for joining us on this momentous occasion. And of course, I will be remiss if I don't say that this is a partnership with UNDP. It's a partnership that partnership that we cherish, and a partnership that can only bring us together for more growth and more work towards gender equality throughout the world. So thank you, UNDP, for your partnership as well. And thank you all for attending this session. Thank you so much.
And I would not be doing justice to the session if I didn't emphasize that it's incredible work that UN Women and UNDP have done. She did say that we need to expand our knowledge as we move forward. And I believe that this is where we start. We do have with us in the room, I would like to recognize the country representative UN Women and the rep UNDP who are in the room. All right. Now, still to give welcoming remarks, please do join me in welcoming Achim Steiner, who is the Undersecretary General and Administrator, United Nations Development Program. And we do have a video that we're going to be sharing. I welcome you to direct your attention to the screens. And as we get that ready, I'd like to mention that, well, Achim has given over 3 decades to the work, has a global leadership on sustainable development, climate resilience, and international cooperation, and has dedicated a lot of work and tirelessly done that to champion sustainability and economic growth, as well as equality for the vulnerable, and has a vocal advocacy for the sustainable development goals. Do we have our video ready? I'd like to call on our technical team. All right.
Technical my dear friend and colleague, Seema Bahus, Excellencies, colleagues and friends. Regrettably, I'm unable to be with you in Kigali today. However, I am very pleased to just share a few brief remarks as we launch these pioneering twin indices on gender equality and women's empowerment today. It comes at a critical moment for generation equality. We are seeing how cascading global crises, including COVID-19, have highlighted and exacerbated existing gender inequalities. That includes unequal access to healthcare, to education, and economic opportunities. A single indicator or a binary measurement of gender equality is simply not able to capture the multiple interacting deprivations that women and girls face at the same time. That was the underlying principle behind the composite gender indices, pioneered in the United Nations Development Programme's 1995 Human Development Report. It introduced 2 new measurements to rank countries on their performance and progress towards gender equality. The 2 experimental indices being launched today by UN Women and UNDP mark another step in this constant evolution, helping to ensure that development and gender equality are inextricably linked. These indices are based on a new multidimensional measurement framework and use new data sources covering 2 dimensions of gender inequality. The first, captured in the new Women's Empowerment Index, focuses on measuring women's power and freedom to make choices and seize opportunities in life. Notably, it is the first ever UN Gender Index that includes violence against women and girls as a standalone element. The second dimension, captured in the Global Gender Parity Index, offers an assessment of the gender gap across 4 dimensions of human development: health, education, inclusion, and decision-making. Using these new lenses, the findings are stark. Analyzing data from 114 countries, the indices find that 3.1 billion women and girls live in countries characterized by low or middle performance on women's empowerment and low or middle performance in achieving gender parity. In other words, they are living in countries that do not allow them to reach their full potential. In fact, according to this new data, women around the world are only reaching 60% of their potential on average. The analysis also shows that higher human development is not the answer in isolation. The report finds that some countries on the lower range of the Human Development Index have some of the smallest gender gaps. Crucially, these 2 indices serve as new tools for policymakers to track how their countries are faring in meeting their obligations towards achieving women's empowerment and gender equality. There are clear policy actions that are urgently needed. For instance, we must focus on policies that both value and redistribute care work. More emphasis on education is needed, given that fewer than half of all women aged 25 or older have completed secondary or a higher level of schooling in 87 of the countries surveyed. And critically, more efforts are required to eliminate the scourge of violence against women and girls. This includes comprehensive prevention measures and directly challenging deeply ingrained social norms that allow gender-based violence to flourish. Indeed, the Human Development Report Office's recent Gender Social Norms Index underlined how gender biases are still pervasive and extraordinarily persistent. UNDP is pushing other new boundaries. To take just one example, we are piloting new monitoring systems using artificial intelligence to track and analyze gender hate speech on social media, helping countries to guide new policies to tackle it. Dear Seema, Excellencies, colleagues, gender equality champions, and friends. The old adage that you can't improve what you don't measure is also applicable here. As we work towards the SDG Summit this September, we hope that the twin indices will provide countries first and foremost with new impetus to support the policy changes needed to make game-changing steps towards gender equality. This analysis, at its core, is about ensuring that women and girls everywhere can expand their capabilities and enjoy full access to opportunities to secure their human rights and realize their fundamental freedoms. As part of the UN family and together with UN Women, UNDP will continue to collaborate closely with our sister agencies and our many partners to advance fresh new insights that can help to effect real change for real people. That is based on a common recognition that women's empowerment and gender equality are truly critical and unfinished business of our time. Indeed, the path to equal is not an easy one. Yet it is the only path to a peaceful, prosperous, sustainable, and fair world. Thank you.
That we needed an overview of what the twin indices are all about. Well, now we get to a more in-depth view of what the indices are. And we have two incredible people coming to the floor to take us through that. First, I would like to call on Papa Sek, who is a Chief Research and Data Section Leader at UN Women. Papa Sek is a chief statistician at UN Women. As said, since joining UN Women in 2009, he has led statistics and data work at the UN Women and has also contributed to the research work of UN Women more broadly, including co-authoring 2 editions of Progress of the World's Women, as well as various other research products. He leads UN Women's efforts to monitor the SDGs, and for the past year has contributed and coordinated the UN system's efforts to ensure inclusion of stronger gender indicators in the SDGs. But we believe in equal, as you heard earlier. He will be joined by Yan Chunzang, who is a chief statistician and human development report officer at UNDP. Let's show her some love. Okay. She is a chief statistician, as I stated, working in the Human Development Report Office at UNDP and has more than 20 years of quantitative research experience on a wide range of economic and sustainable development topics, and has published a number of articles on international macroeconomics, climate change, development, economic vulnerabilities, as well as social protection in referred academic and policy journals. I'd like now to hand over the floor to them.
Thank you very much. I'll go first. Slide, please. Can we move to the presentation? Could you move to the slide of twin gender indices? Yes, okay. Thank you very much. Good afternoon to everyone in the room and hello to those joining us online. Welcome to the launch of the Twin Gender Indices. In this report, we introduce a new multidimensional measurement framework. Then this framework comprises the twin indices. One is WEI, Women Empowerment Index. The other is GPPI, Global Gender Parity Index. Then these twin indices intend to help answer the two distinct yet interlinked questions at the core of women's rights and human development. Question number one, do women and girls have the power and freedom to make choices and seize opportunities in their life? Question number two, is gender parity achieved? So WEI intends to answer the first question, while GGPI addresses the second. Then here you can see the dimensions and the indicators included in the construction of these two indices. Dimensions are in color circles, and individual indicators are listed in bullet points. These two indices share the same four dimensions: simply health, education, labor market and financial inclusion, and participation in decision making. They share also very similar set of indicators, except for the health dimension. Because GGPI here measures the relative status of women versus men, while WEI focuses solely on women. So for the health dimension of Women Empowerment Index, we pick two women-specific health indicators: modern method of contraception and adolescent birth rates. These reflect the girl and woman's reproductive and sexual rights. Then for the Women's Empowerment Index, innovatively, we add a fifth dimension, which is freedom from violence against the woman. As our administrator mentioned earlier, this is the first UN index, including violence against the woman indicator in a standalone dimension. Why is it important? It is important because it emphasizes the fact that any type of violence against the woman is a serious form of capability deprivation. It has a broad implication for women and girls' power and freedom for other dimensions. Then the indicators included in our twin index measurement framework, 72% of them are SDG indicators. So this framework is aligned with the SDG framework. What are the key findings? In the report, we calculate the twin indices for 114 countries. Then the WEI, Women's Empowerment Index, show us globally women are empowered to achieve only 60% of their full potential. Then the GGPI, the second index, shows us globally, on average, women achieves 72% of what men achieve across the four human development dimensions, which implies 28% of a gender gap. If you look at the diagram on the right, here we show these 114 countries' twin index values. So in the report, we don't rank countries according to these two indices, but we place them into four performance groups. Countries scoring 0.8 or higher are placed in the high performance group, followed by upper middle, lower middle, and low performance groups. Then if you look at the diagram, we have only 6 countries performing high in both women's empowerment and in gender parity. Then these 6 countries are in this up right corner. Then these 6 countries only represent 1% of the global female population. So this is one of the most striking facts or conclusions of the report, we have less than 1% of women and girls living in countries with both high women's empowerment and high gender parity. But this is the destination all countries should be aspired to move towards to. Then here in the diagram, you can also see the different colors. These colors indicate which human development group these countries belong to. So you can see some very high human development groups in dark blue and high human development groups in green. They also fail to achieve high women's empowerment or high gender parity. What does that mean? It means higher human development does not automatically translate into high women's empowerment or higher gender equality. Actually, we find more than half of the countries with low and middle women's empowerment and gender parity performance fall in the high or very high human development group, 47 out of 85 countries. So these key findings help to illustrate and reiterate why we need the twin indices. Because the Women's Empowerment Index and the Global Gender Parity Index, these two provide separate but complementary lenses to measure the progress. When looked at separately, each provides a partial view of the progress. Only when looked together, the twin indices provide a more comprehensive picture on the challenges faced by women and girls. And this comprehensive picture could help countries to design more targeted interventions and policy changes. Now I'm moving my presentation to Papa to give more analysis on the regional and dimensional picture.
Hello? Yes, okay, this one works. Now, just extending my greetings to all of you in the room, but also those who are joining us online today. The results that Yanchun just talked about are really sobering, right? So, and really, I think tells us also that there's a lot more to do. But they also hide a lot of heterogeneity, whether we are talking about at country level, at regional level, or even at the dimension level. Just looking at the regional distribution here, the figures, we can see that see why we need these two indices, right? So let me just take the case of Sub-Saharan Africa, for example. Sub-Saharan Africa scores on gender parity near the world average, right? But when it comes to women's empowerment, it is really at a very low level. So this points to the fact that essentially both men and women are actually not doing well in the region. When it comes to the Middle East, North Africa and Western Asia, this is essentially the region with the lowest achievements. And so essentially here it is just that women are really at a low level compared to men, both on in terms of gender parity, but also in terms of their own achievements and empowerment. But here, I think, again, the key point here is what was mentioned by the administrator of UNDP, that 3.1 billion women and girls live in countries that are characterized by low or middle achievements. So when we look at the indices by the scores by dimensions, what we see is really, again, as I mentioned, a lot of heterogeneity. Health is relatively better, right? Both in terms of, for both indices. But the biggest challenge that we can see from the screen is really on women's participation, which is low across the board when it comes both on in terms of both indices, but also are really dragging, this is what is really also dragging all the scores down. But I think one point that I think, you know, should be should come clear in this figure is that, and this is a stand that UN Women and UNDP had to take, including violence against women means that no country will achieve full women's empowerment without zero prevalence of violence against women. And that, I think, has to be really a clear message here of the importance of really ensuring that violence against women is tackled fully. And just finally on the recommendations, I won't spend too much time on this because the report is really rich in terms of the insights, the analysis, and really again some of the recommendations. And I encourage you, all of you, to go access the report and really read through it, because I think there are lots of insights that can be gained from it. But again, we've pulled out recommendations along all the dimensions. But I think a key point here is that it is not just actions in one dimension that will make progress happen. It is a set of comprehensive measures along all these dimensions that will really help us to achieve progress. And finally, I will close by saying that the indices cover 111 countries out of 194 UN member countries. And the reason for that is because of the lack of data. Lack of data across all the dimensions. And through the work that we are doing, we really hope that we will be able to make progress. But it's really also a call on countries to improve the production of gender data in order for us to include more countries in the future. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much to both of you. Can we appreciate them one more time? We are now going into a very interactive session. We invite you to really listen to what our panelists are going to be sharing with us. Unfortunately, because of time constraints, we will not be having a Q&A session, but perhaps after this session, you could stay behind and feel free to engage any of the people on our panel. I'll not be introducing the two people up here with me again, but I will be calling on other people who will be joining this particular panel session, starting with Jamile Bingio. Do we have her here? I hope I did your name justice. And if I didn't, I'll really do my best to make sure I memorize it after this session. Well, she serves as the Senior Coordinator for the Gender Equality and Women Empowerment in the Office of the Administrator at the U.S. Agency for International Development, USAID. And prior to joining USAID, she served as a senior fellow on women and foreign policy at the Council on Foreign Relations, where she researched and lectured as well as published widely on the relationship between gender equality, national security, and global prosperity. So we know she's definitely going to bring a wealth of knowledge and experience to this conversation. Also joining us is Frida Githuki, who is the Executive Director, GROOTS Kenya. Karibu, welcome. Thank you for being with us today. She's a young leader and an ardent champion for gender equality and women's rights. She is the Executive Director, as mentioned earlier, of GROOTS Kenya, a national movement of grassroots women and girls. She spends her time monitoring grassroots women when it comes to leadership and also powering grassroots women feminism and so much more. Her profile is so rich. In the interest of time, I will not be reading all of it. Last but definitely not least, also joining our panel discussion today is Greta Bull, who is the Director of Women's Economic Empowerment, Gender Equality at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Let's appreciate her. They're doing incredible work here in Rwanda and globally. She leads the foundation's work on women's economic empowerment, where she serves and oversees a portfolio of investment covering gender data, evidence, and women's economic collectives. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we only have one gentleman on the panel today, but I believe he's definitely going to represent well. Well, in just a moment, I will be directing questions to our panelists. Bear with me. Looks like I did get my notes a bit jumbled up, but we'll get to it. All right. We'll definitely start with you, uh, with all of our panelists, beg your pardon, with the exception of Krista, Papasek, and Yanchon, because I think you weighed in on this earlier, and you can take turns. Everybody has a microphone? We'll share this one. Oh, you will share that? Sharing is caring. We'll start from the extreme left. I'd like to hear from you. If you could reflect on the presentation we just had from Papasek and Yanchon. I would like you to tell us from what you've actually perceived, what your immediate reaction is hearing about. We've had the data. They paint a very clear picture of what the indices can achieve and so much more. So if you could share with us your 2 cents.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the invite to be here, and we're really pleased to be sponsoring this work in partnership with UN Women. The Gates Foundation is very focused on gender equality. I lead the women's economic empowerment work, but we have lots of other teams working on different aspects of this. So it's nice to see an index that covers that multidimensional aspect of gender equality. I think the challenge going forward, so we can sort of track progress and that's important, but then the challenge going forward is how we deepen it for each use case, for lack of a better word. So my strategy is based in women's ability to earn and control an income. So as I look at the component pieces of those indicators, I'm going to need to go deeper, right? Because if I look at female labor force participation, it tells me who's in the labor force and getting paid. It doesn't tell me how much they're getting paid and what the quality of their participation in the labor force is. And so I need to take that as a starting point and then figure out where to go from there as a use case. Similarly, with financial inclusion, we know that access to having an account is just access to having an account. Half the accounts in India aren't even used, right? And so understanding whether those accounts are used, but then what they're being used for. Do women have access to credit? Do they have access to credit on equal terms to men? Is that credit being provided responsibly? Do they have access to markets? Do they have access to childcare? And so I think this is sort of a good index that links together all of those different things, because we have teams working on health, we have teams working on family planning. So it gives us a composite view of the world, but then as we think about specific use cases, we have to go deeper, and that's where I think there's a lot of work to be done, and we're sponsoring work in partnership with both UN Women and other partners to really dig in and understand that more fully at the country level. So happy to see this work happening.
Absolutely. We need to go deeper and really understand what it is that we are trying to solve. Let's hear from you.
Yeah, thank you. I think for me, as a data champion working at the grassroots, I would say, one, the Twin Index is a response to the call for intersectionality. So in that way, it's good, because what we've been saying is let's measure this progress, the multidimensional issues that are impacting women and girls of different identities. So it's a step towards the right direction, and it's responsive in that sense. However, I'm a bit surprised about the result. I didn't expect 1%. If you asked me, I would have said maybe 10. So the findings are quite dismal, I may say. And it tells me that we are feeding on the wrong cocktail. And here I'm talking about policies, resources, actors. The ingredients are not wrong, but how we mix those ingredients and how they travel through the digestive system. And here I'm talking about the institutional framework through which policies are digested, they are processed, how resources get to the 3 billion women who've been left behind. I think there's a problem there. That's what the index is telling us, and that's what we really need to reform. The other thing that I see is that we are not using data enough, because how can we invest so much in developing policy, putting resources, reforming the gender institution. We have gender ministries in every country that you can think of, but we are still where the data is showing us. It means that we are not using data to inform our action. We are traveling blind, and I hope that this, of course, is a call for us to wake up.
A really good place to start indeed. We cannot travel blind. We cannot attempt to solve things blindly. Well, let's move on to you, Greta.
Thank you. I'll echo how critical it is that we have a more detailed picture of where women are around the world, where we are in our commitments to advance gender equality. And we need the call to action like that is being reinforced by this data. We cannot accept that only 1% of the population of women and girls are living in situations where they have empowerment levels at parity levels with those of men in their communities. That's not what we as a global community have committed to. And so it is very welcome that we have data reinforcing both the status of women's empowerment and the gender gaps and different indicators to help us understand both where there are opportunities for where women's empowerment is growing, but where is it growing potentially slower than that of men's empowerment? And this isn't what we're looking at in some sectors now, that it may be that, yes, our programs are being effective in contributing to empowerment, but if we compare the gender gap data and see, in fact, that the gender gap is growing, then we see, in fact, we can't be patting ourselves on the back for the success of that program in advancing women's empowerment when men's empowerment without that programming is accelerating at a quicker pace. So we do need this kind of data to help hold ourselves accountable. And I think it's critical as well, and here's a call to action for us all, that we are combining it with the data on what works to close these gaps. So this is an important starting point. What is the status? What are the gaps? Combine this with the data on what works in our investments to close the gaps, and then together we can have more targeted, more effective investments, drink from the right cocktails so that we really can accelerate gender equality and achieve the goals that we have set for ourselves.
Thank you. I would like to stay with you for the next question, but also kind of really appreciate what you're saying. Knowing the status helps us address the gaps, and then we're able to have the right interventions. Greta, well, we are at a critical we're at critical crossroads, and right now I'd like to understand from you, looking at the gender indices, and also when it comes to stock taking, when it comes to the SDGs at the SDG summit, what this means for the efforts targeting achieving those SDGs. Could you weigh in on that? And then we'll have responses from the rest of the panelists.
Yes. No, the coming SDG summit is such a critical moment of reflection for us all of where are we. I think we all knew that we weren't achieving what we had hoped. We weren't on pace to achieve the SDG goals on SDG 5 on gender equality, but this data just reinforces just how far we are from those goals. And it's important to highlight that because we collectively in this community, we're making the case that SDG 5 should be a priority topic in the SDG summit, that we together, as we reflect on where are we as a global community in achieving the SDGs, that we are putting high on that agenda reflection on where are we in achieving the gender equality measures. And I think looking across the different sectors that these indices highlight, health, education, economic growth, and so on, that we kind of recognize it's reinforcing what we've known from other research, which is that by not achieving gender equality, we cannot achieve any of the other SDGs that we've set, that our progress across all dimensions of development is hindered, is limited when we allow gender inequality to persist in those sectors, in those aspects of development. And so, I think drawing on this call to action, drawing on the reminder, the stark data of this 1% being where we are right now, that it is really critical that we draw on this to make sure that as we come together at the SDG summits, that we center attention to gender equality.
Thank you. And sorry for baptizing you a new name. I think yours is just fine. But I would like to throw the same question to you, Greta, if you could weigh in on the same.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I'd like to just echo the prior comments. I mean, I think the index and the paper draws out just how far away we are still from achieving gender equality. But I think also it sort of helps countries figure out what they need to tackle. This is complex. There are lots of different pieces of these indicators. And so one of the things I like about the partnership that we have with UN Women is we're also working with country statistical offices to understand what sits beneath this broad index and how you start solving for some of these problems, because it's a very complex challenge, gender equality, and it breaks down into multiple pieces. So the data that we are able to generate working in partnership, not only with national statistics offices, but the private sector should be part of this too. Like, how do we find inequalities in the work that we're doing and try to solve that? So again, I come from the financial sector. I tend to think in terms of the financial sector. We've seen a couple of countries take a look at, do women have equal access to resources? Well, no, they don't. And so how do you start fixing that when you're a central banker? How do you start fixing that when you're a minister of finance? How do you make sure that those resources get into people's hands? But to be able to do that, you need the data that drives you in that direction, because otherwise you are flying blind. So I think this is a really great way of benchmarking countries against each other and telling us that none of us have got this completely right. There's still a lot of work to do in every country in the world. But then I think the really hard work comes when we have to take it and implement it and see, okay, what's going to get us to, equality. And I think one of the challenges on gender equality in the SDGs is that it's sort of spread across all the SDGs. So I don't find my work in SDG 5, my work's in SDG 1, right? And so I think figuring out how we push against all of those SDGs and make sure that we're getting women all of the support that they need across the different dimensions is going to be an epic challenge, and it's going to require mobilization across multiple partners.
All right. Staying with you for a minute,
Yes, sorry.
moving on from the SDGs, I would like you to help us unpack how these distinctive indices can influence and impact decision-making, informed decision-making, and also policies.
Well, I think you have to be able to measure a goal to be able to measure progress towards it, right? So this is a good starting point. And a gender equality index is so broad. We have to start thinking about what it means underneath. So if I take women's ability to earn an income and I look at South Asia, take India versus Kenya, where we work. In India, women aren't in the labor force.
Just a minute. Can we hear her? Yes? Okay.
I mean, the labor force participation in India is 20 to 25%, right? It's very, very low. So women aren't getting paid for their labor. It's not like Indian women are sitting around and doing nothing, right? In Africa, most women are in the labor force, but they're getting paid very little. So how do we start digging in under those statistics and understanding the normative issues, but also just the equality issues that get women out in the street and enable them to be able to go and earn an income, right? So I think being able to take apart some of these indicators and really dig in under them to understand how we move. And it's not just gender ministries. I need to be talking to the Ministry of Finance. I need to be talking to the central bank. I need to be talking to the Ministry of Labor. And so, we need to sort of package this data for different audiences because they move different things in the economy and in the equality ecosystem.
Thank you.
And I'm sorry, I'm going to have to duck out early for another commitment, so
Yes.
that's why I've been talking so much.
Well, I think we'll bear with her. She will need to leave early, but we'll continue with the rest of the panelists. Thank you so much for your time. Let's show her some love as She continues with the rest of her day. I'd like to move on to you, Frida, and kind of remain on the same. In your opinion, how these related but distinct indices can inform and also influence policies as well as decision making?
All right, thank you. I think we are in a moment where governments of the global north and some in the global south, although gradually are developing feminist foreign policies. And as women movement, we are apprehensive of what these policies would be or what they can deliver. And it's really our desire that they are built on lived realities of the 3 billion women we are talking about. So the index brings to the front the story that we are trying to share with the governments that are developing these policies. So it gives us really the real-time data to be able to influence the policies investment that are going to those FFPs. The other thing I would say, and she talked about it, is that the index provides us with parameters, with methodologies, with learnings that we can also apply in our different contexts. Some of us are working at country level, so we need to see the situation in our own local context, get our own local averages so that we can engage our policymakers, because policies are being formulated and improved every day. So that's also another way that we can, or we will use this index to engage our own local policymakers. But the other place that I see a lot of opportunity is pushing back the pushback. There is a very strong anti-gender movement that keeps telling us there's a lot of investment that is being done on women and girls, and that we are leaving men behind and all that. But the index tells the true story based on facts. Are we making progress? Yes or no? These are things that are factual, so we will also use it to be able to push back on that pushback.
All right. Thank you. Very well said. Now we'll move on to a more technical part of this conversation at Data 2X. Well, if you can help us, and I think I'll direct this to the both of you, if you could weigh in, why the launch of these indices is important and how we are going to be able to use it to inform the work that is being done moving forward. We'll start with you, Papa Sek.
Thank you, Isabel. So at UN Women, essentially one of the core pillars of our work is on data. So working with countries to improve the production and use of gender data, which is really fundamental, as we've talked about essentially in this panel, if we are to advance both goals of gender equality and women's empowerment. But one question that we keep getting all the time, and from media, but also from our partners, is precisely how is the world doing on gender equality and women's empowerment? And with these two indices, we've been able to answer that question. But obviously also understanding that this is still a work in progress. There are lots of dimensions that are still not there. Unpaid care work is not fully there because we don't have the data yet, not because it's not important. Gender and the environment is really, I think, an important area as well. So there are lots of issues that really, should be part of our measurement frameworks that are not there. But we see that this is really an excellent start, and really working also with UNDP, which has decades of experience in this area, really, I think, helps us to advance these measurement frameworks and really move forward.
Very well said. Thank you for weighing in. We do have one more person joining us virtually. Do we have the person ready? We have Krista Jones Baptista, who is joining us virtually. Krista, can you hear us? Okay, so she will be submitting her thoughts on this in a short video that we're going to play for you now. If you could focus your attention to the screens, we'll have that in a second.
My name is Krista Jones Baptista, and I'm the Executive Director of Data 2X. At Data 2X, we know that gender data is integral to achieving gender equality. While major data gaps persist and accelerated progress is still needed, organizations like UN Women and the United Nations Development Program are working to change that. The launch of the 2 new indices today is just one example. Gender indices are powerful tools that help us measure and understand gender disparities and guide decision makers towards evidence-based solutions. However, tools are only as powerful as those who wield them. It is up to us to ensure gender indices are carefully designed with purpose and transparency, are built on strong data systems that support country capacity, and are used for policies that align with a gender equal future. Data 2X's mandate in this next decade is to incubate, replicate, and scale the gender data solutions that will help us make progress faster and smarter. I look forward to further collaboration and to utilizing the new indices to build a more equitable and inclusive world.
Of this new measurement framework, then from our perspective, we are a Human Development Report Office. Then from the very beginning, our Global Human Development Report was published in 1990. Gender disparities was researched and studied. All these years, we have been looking at different ways to better measure gender equality and women's empowerment. But due to data limitations, we before this collaboration, we haven't been able to construct a standalone women's empowerment index. But in 2016, we already added a women empowerment dashboard and life course gender gap dashboard to our existing suite of gender indices, which include gender development index, gender inequality index. These indices were widely used by policymakers and academia. But now we also have gender social norm index. On Thursday, we're going to have a side event on that. If you're interested, please come in. So I think it's important because now with the newly available data, our intent to present a women's empowerment index along with the parity index becomes available. Timing is right, partnership is right. So we managed to work out a set of indices, even experimental, but I think it will stimulate a lot of debates, a lot of discussions. The purpose is to provide better fit for purpose measurement tools for policymaking without losing the technical rigor. So as the founding father of our Human Development Report Office once said, development, if not engendered, is endangered. So we need to keep that in mind. Thank you.
Very, very, very well said. Thank you. We'll now move on to you, Papa Sek. We are running a little bit late, but you have the final shot.
So for me, I mean, I won't hold you up any longer. What I would just say in a few words is really, the fact that, as I mentioned, the report is really rich. The data is also available online, including the index scores by countries, by regions, and all the dimensions. So please feel free to access the report and its resources. And also, again, these indices are experimental. So if you do have any comments or suggestions or questions for us, you will find our contact details on our website, and feel free to contact us, and happy to continue the discussion.
For those who have not been to the website, could you tell us how can they get to the website? Where exactly can they look for those who have not been to the site?
So there is a Scan Me up there, and if you point your camera to it, basically you will have access. But if you just go to either the site of UNDP, so undp.org or unwomen.org, you will see essentially the report there in the first page promoted. So yeah.
Exactly. On our Human Development Report Office website, the report is right there. We have a dedicated page with all the supporting material, including the Excel tables, downloadable table, interactive data visualization, as well as a technical note. Please check out.
All right, thank you so much. Please help me appreciate our panelists. They've done an incredible job. And Krista, who joined us virtually. And thank you so much for emphasizing why the twin indices are important and what people can expect when they come to the sites and get to learn more. The purpose of this session is not only to introduce, but to interest you in taking the time. This session alone, 1 hour, we cannot unpack everything there is in these twin indices. But go ahead, make some time, learn, because with wisdom, like we said earlier, we cannot have blind interventions. With this information, it's a good place to start and to